October 14th, 1942, Warsaw. The air in the shop didn't smell like meat anymore. It smelled of wet sawdust mixed with the sharp tang of carbolic soap, the kind we used to scrub away evidence of yesterday's rationed kill. A single pig. 140 kilograms that had to feed 300 people, or at least appear to on paper. The mathematics of survival had replaced the art of butchery. I stood in the pre-dawn darkness, my breath visible in the unheated back room, and felt the weight of the cleaver in my hand. The same cleaver my father had used, the same one that had hung on the wall when this shop bore our family name above the door. Now, a German ordnance sign hung there instead. Fleischerei, Betrieb unter Aufsicht der Besatzungsbehörde, meat shop, operating under supervision of the occupation authority. The word supervision was a pleasant fiction. What they meant was control. What they meant was surveillance. What they meant was that every gram of fat, every splinter of bone, every drop of blood belonged to them now. The walk from my apartment to the shop took 12 minutes. I knew because I had timed it against the rhythm of my heartbeat, the way a man learns to measure his life in occupation, not by years or months, but by the distance between curfews and checkpoints. Krakowski Przedmieście Street lay beneath a blanket of October fog, the kind that clung to the rubble like a shroud. The buildings that still stood were pockmarked with shrapnel, their windows stuffed with cardboard, where glass used to be. The ones that didn't stand anymore were just gaps in the skyline, missing teeth in a beaten face. 3 years. 3 years since the Stukas came, since the siege, since the world we knew was crushed beneath tank treads and the thunder of artillery. The propaganda posters watched me pass. A blonde German mother holding wheat, smiling down at us from a wall that had once displayed advertisements for Wedel chocolates. Europa arbeitet für den Sieg. Europe works for victory, not our victory, theirs. The sound of jackboots on cobblestones echoed from somewhere behind me. I didn't turn. You learned not to turn. You learned to keep your head down, your papers ready, your face a mask of blank cooperation. The Wehrmacht patrol passed. 3 young soldiers, barely old enough to shave, their rifles slung over shoulders, their breath steaming in the cold. One of them was singing something. A beer hall song. The words floated through the fog like obscenities. At the corner of Senatorska Street, I passed the queue. It had already formed, even though the shop wouldn't open for another 3 hours. Women, mostly, wrapped in threadbare coats, their faces gray with exhaustion and hunger. They stood in silence, each clutching a ration book like a prayer book, each knowing that today, like every day, there wouldn't be enough. The shop was a ghost of itself. I unlocked the door, 3 locks now, German regulations, and stepped into the cold interior. The electric lights no longer worked. The power was rationed to German facilities first, civilian businesses last. I lit the kerosene lamp, and the yellow glow revealed the skeleton of my trade. The meat hooks hung empty. Dozens of them, iron S-curves that used to sag under the weight of beef quarters and pork sides, now swinging slightly in the draft, catching the lamplight like gallows. In 1939, before the war, before the occupation, those hooks had been full on market days. Customers would point. That one, the marbled sirloin, or give me the shoulder roast, the one with the good fat cap. Choice, abundance, words that belong to another lifetime. The cleaver sat on the butcher's block, its blade worn thin from years of sharpening. My grandfather had bought it in 1898 when this neighborhood still belonged to the Russian Empire. It had survived empires and wars and revolutions. Would it survive this? The tools of my trade lay arranged with precision. Boning knives with their narrow, flexible blades, the meat saw with its coarse teeth, the steel for honing edges, the scale with its brass weights. Each weight now registered with the Wirtschaftsamt, the economic office, each one inspected monthly to ensure I wasn't cheating the system, as if we had enough meat to cheat with. But it was what wasn't there that defined the space. The refrigeration unit, dismantled and shipped east to some German military installation. The sausage stuffer, its copper fixtures requisitioned for the war effort. The grinding machine, broken, with no replacement parts available unless you knew a man who knew a man who had access to the black market. In 1939, I had been a craftsman. In 1942, I was a magician, expected to transform scarcity into sustenance, to make the impossible possible, to feed the hungry with empty hooks and hope. The pig arrived at dawn. It came on a German military truck, already butchered, already inspected, already stamped with the eagle and swastika that marked it as property of the general government. The driver, a Polish collaborator in a German uniform, handed me the paperwork without meeting my eyes. 3 forms. Every transaction required 3 forms now. One for the economic office, one for the food distribution center, one for my records, to be produced on demand should the Gestapo decide to audit my existence. The carcass weighed 140 kilograms. I knew this because the stamp said so, because the scale at the collection point had measured it, because every gram was accounted for in the vast machinery of occupation bureaucracy. What the stamp didn't say was how much of that weight was bone, gristle, and offal, the parts that wouldn't feed anyone but would still count against my allocation. I hoisted the carcass onto the block. The meat was cold but not frozen. Refrigeration was a luxury reserved for German facilities. I had perhaps 6 hours before spoilage began, 6 hours to break down this animal into portions that would satisfy both the ration quotas and the desperate faces waiting outside. The first cut was always the hardest. Not physically, my arms had made this motion 10,000 times, but morally, because every slice of the blade was a calculation. How thin could I cut the chops before they became insults? How much bone could I include in a meat portion before someone complained to the authorities? How much fat could I trim away and hide for the black market before the inspector noticed? In 1939, we trimmed the fat and threw it away. Customers wanted lean meat, marbled but not greasy. They were particular. They were spoiled, though we didn't know it then. In 1942, we hoarded fat like gold. 100 grams of pork fat was worth more than a week's wages. It could be rendered into lard for cooking, mixed with sawdust to make ersatz soap, traded for bread or potatoes or medicine. Nothing was wasted. Nothing could be wasted. I separated the cuts according to the official categories. Category 1, the choice cuts reserved for German personnel. Category 2, standard portions for Polish workers with heavy labor classifications. Category 3, everything else, the scraps and sinew, for everyone else. The Category 1 portions were generous. A German soldier's ration was 400 grams of meat per week. A Polish civilian's ration was 180 grams. The mathematics was simple. Their lives were worth more than ours. I wrapped each portion in newspaper. Actual newsprint was scarce now, so we used German propaganda sheets, letting the lies about victories in Russia and Africa soak up the blood, and arranged them in the display case. 30 portions, that was all. 30 pieces of meat to serve a neighborhood of 300 families. The regulations arrived weekly, sometimes daily, printed on cheap paper, distributed by functionaries with rubber stamps and dead eyes, each one adding another layer to the suffocating architecture of control. Verordnung number 347, regarding the collection of bones. All bones from slaughtered animals must be collected and delivered to the designated collection point for processing into bone meal and glue for military use. Failure to comply, imprisonment. Verordnung number 412. Regarding the rendering of animal fat. All animal fat exceeding household ration allowances must be delivered to the Reich food estate, private sale or trade, punishable by deportation to labor camp. Verordnung number 503, regarding business hours. All food shops must maintain specified hours of operation. Early closing suggests hoarding. Late closing suggests black market activity. Either immediate investigation. There was a specific law for everything, a specific decree for every aspect of survival. The Germans had taken the practice of butchery, an art form, a craft passed down through generations, and reduced it to a series of regulations and prohibitions. They had turned food into a weapon, hunger into a tool of control. The inspections were random but frequent. A man would arrive, usually in the morning, wearing a civilian suit but carrying the authority of the occupation. He would check my scales. Were they calibrated correctly? He would count the portions. Did they match the paperwork? He would inspect the waste bins. Was I throwing away anything that should be saved for the Reich? I learned to smile at these men. I learned to bow slightly, to say, mein Herr, in my broken German, to play the role of the cooperative Pole who understood his place in the new order. I learned to hide my hatred behind a mask of obsequious efficiency, because the alternative was Pauiak prison, or worse, Auschwitz, the name that had become synonymous with disappearance, the place where people were sent and never returned. We didn't know the full truth then, not yet, but we knew enough. We knew that cooperation, real or performed, was the price of survival, and so I smiled, and I complied. And I kept my portion of bones hidden in the cellar, along with the extra fat I skimmed from each carcass, the small acts of resistance that kept my family alive and my soul from completely breaking. Money had lost its meaning. I kept the German occupation marks in the register, wrinkled bills with Hitler's face, inflated to worthlessness by a currency system designed to extract wealth while providing nothing in return. A kilogram of pork shoulder cost 40 marks on the official ration. A loaf of bread cost 6 marks. These were the legal prices printed on official price lists enforced by German economic police. But these numbers were fiction. The real economy existed elsewhere, in whispered conversations and coded exchanges, in the elaborate dance of survival that we called the black market. The new currency was the coupon. The ration book was our Bible, its pages divided into sections marked with letters and numbers: F for Fleisch, meat; B for Brot, bread; M for Milch, milk. Each coupon was dated, each one valid for a specific week, each one worth a precisely calculated number of grams. A Polish civilian received 180 grams of meat per week, 2 kilograms of bread, 0 butter, 14 grams of sugar, 100 grams of jam. These were the numbers that determined whether you lived or slowly starved. But the ration system was a lie built on a foundation of lies. The quotas existed on paper, but the supplies didn't exist in reality. Most weeks, I received half the meat allocation I was supposed to distribute. Some weeks, nothing arrived at all. And yet the coupons kept coming, kept circulating, kept promising sustenance that didn't exist. The exchange rate was measured in desperation. A kilogram of lard, real lard, not the ersatz mixture of potato starch and industrial fat, was worth 200 marks on the black market, or a gold ring, or a family heirloom, or a favor owed, a debt to be collected later, a moral compromise that would haunt you at night. The black market operated in plain sight, invisible only to those who chose not to see. A woman would come to the shop, purchase her legal ration of meat, and then whisper, "Do you have anything extra? My husband is sick. My children are hungry." I would glance at the street, checking for informers, and then reach under the counter for the package I'd hidden. 50 grams of pork fat wrapped in brown paper, worth more than our weekly wages. The mathematics of survival required constant calculation. If I sold everything on the official ration, my family would starve within a month. If I hoarded too much for the black market, the inspectors would notice the discrepancy between my meat allocation and my official sales. The balance was precarious, measured in grams and lies. Barter had replaced commerce. A cut of meat for a sack of potatoes from a farmer's hidden stores, fat for coal to heat the apartment, bones for information about the next German raid. We had become a society of traders, each person a merchant of scarcity, each transaction a negotiation between hunger and risk. The German authorities knew about the black market. Of course they knew, but they tolerated it within limits, because the alternative was mass starvation and the unrest that would follow. As long as we stayed quiet, as long as we didn't resist openly, as long as we directed our desperation inward rather than outward, they allowed the shadow economy to exist. But the penalties for being caught were severe. Execution for profiteering, deportation for hoarding, public humiliation, forced to stand in the market square wearing a sign that read, "I am a thief who stole from the German people." The cruelty was deliberate, designed to turn us against each other, to make us informers and collaborators, to destroy the social bonds that might otherwise unite us in resistance. And yet we continued. Because the alternative was death. Because survival required compromise. Because in the calculus of occupation, morality became a luxury that only the full could afford. He arrived at noon, just as I was serving the last customer. Feldwebel Richter, Sergeant Richter. I knew his name because he made sure everyone knew it, because he visited the shop twice a week, because he had appointed himself the unofficial overseer of our street. He was perhaps 35, thick-necked and red-faced, with the look of a man who had been a butcher himself in some previous life, Bavaria maybe, or Saxony, before the war had transformed him into an occupier. Metzger, he called out, his German cutting through the murmur of the queue. Butcher, I need service. The woman I was serving, Mrs. Kowalski, a widow with 3 children, froze, her hand clutching her ration coupons. I gave her an almost imperceptible nod, and she stepped aside, eyes downcast, melting into the crowd of waiting customers. Ja, Herr Feldwebel, I replied, my voice carefully modulated to convey respect without servility. How may I help you? He pushed through to the counter, his uniform immaculate despite the mud on the streets outside. The Wehrmacht eagle gleamed on his chest. The smell of schnapps hung around him like a cloud. It was noon, and he was already half drunk. This was good. Drunk Germans were unpredictable, but they were also careless. I need meat, he announced, as if this were a revelation. Good meat, not the garbage you sell to these people. He gestured dismissively at the waiting Poles, and I felt the familiar rage rise in my chest, hot and bitter and dangerous. I swallowed it down. Of course, Herr Feldwebel, I have Category 1 portions reserved for Ben. I know what category I get, he interrupted, but I want better. I want a roast. I want what you're hiding in the back. My heart stuttered. How much did he know? How much was he guessing? The extra cuts I'd set aside for black market trading were hidden in the cellar, wrapped and buried beneath sacks of sawdust. Had someone informed on me? Or was this just the casual extortion that defined our daily interactions with the occupiers? Herr Feldwebel, I assure you, I have no unauthorized, don't lie to me. Metzger. His voice dropped, became almost friendly. This was the dangerous moment. Everyone hoards, everyone cheats, I understand. I don't blame you. These are difficult times, yeah? But you need to share with your friends. You need to take care of those who take care of you. The threat was clear. Cooperate or face investigation, provide or be punished. I made a show of hesitation, of reluctance, and then nodded slowly. I may have something, Herr Feldwebel, a small roast, perhaps 2 kilograms. I was saving it for, but of course, if you need it. Good, good. You see, this is how we get along. You help me, I help you. He leaned forward, his breath reeking of alcohol and sausage. And you don't charge me, verstehst du? This is a gift, from a grateful shopkeeper to a representative of the Reich. A gift. Theft disguised as generosity. But I nodded, smiled, and retreated to the back room. The roast I retrieved wasn't the good cut I'd hidden for trading. It was a shoulder roast, mostly bone and gristle, with just enough meat to look substantial. I'd learned this trick months ago. Give the Germans weight, give them size, but don't give them quality. They rarely knew the difference, and when they did, they blamed their own cooks rather than the butcher. I wrapped it carefully, making it look like a precious package, and brought it to the counter. Richter's eyes gleamed with satisfaction, with the pleasure of petty tyranny. Danke, Metzger, he said, taking the package. You are a smart man. Smart men survive. He turned to leave, pushing past the silent, watching Poles, and I allowed myself a moment of small, bitter victory. He would take that roast back to his barracks, perhaps cook it for his fellow sergeants, and they would complain about the toughness, the lack of flavor, the poor quality of Polish meat. And I would survive another day. Mrs. Kowalski returned to the counter after Richter left. Her hands were shaking as she placed her ration coupons on the counter, the week's meat allotment, Section F, valid until Sunday. I'm sorry, I said quietly, weighing out her portion. That should have been your meat he took. She didn't respond, just watched as I wrapped 180 grams of pork in newspaper. But then I did something I shouldn't have done, something that could get us both killed. I reached under the counter, pulled out a small package, maybe 50 grams of the fat I'd skimmed earlier, and tucked it into her shopping bag beneath the official portion. For your children, I whispered. Say nothing. Her eyes filled with tears. She nodded once and left without a word. This was resistance. Not the romantic resistance of partisan fighters in the forest, not the heroic resistance of underground newspapers and sabotage. This was the resistance of daily survival, of small kindnesses, of refusing to let the occupation destroy every shred of our humanity. This was how we fought back. 1 hidden gram of fat at a time. The blackout transformed the city into a landscape of shadows and whispers. I locked the shop at 6, German regulations enforced by curfew patrols, and began the walk home through streets that had been swallowed by darkness. No streetlights, no window lights, just the occasional flicker of a shielded candle behind a curtain, the momentary glow of a forbidden cigarette quickly extinguished. The sound of my footsteps echoed off the buildings, too loud in the silence. I had learned to walk carefully, to avoid the rubble that still littered the sidewalks 3 years after the siege, to navigate by memory and touch in the absolute darkness. Other shapes moved through the night, workers returning home, ghosts of a city that had once been alive with cafes and theaters and laughter. A patrol passed on the parallel street, their voices carrying through the fog, German words, a laugh, the metallic click of a rifle bolt. I pressed myself into a doorway and waited, holding my breath until the sounds faded. The night belonged to them. We just borrowed it, moving through the darkness like thieves in our own city. The apartment building loomed above me, 6 stories of pre-war elegance now crumbling into decay. The stairwell was pitch black. I climbed by counting steps, my hand trailing along the wall, past the 2nd floor where the Nowaks used to live before they were arrested, past the 3rd floor where the windows were still broken from the bombardment. My apartment was cold. We had coal for perhaps 2 hours of heat per day, rationed, controlled, another weapon in the arsenal of occupation. My wife, Helena, was waiting in the kitchen, a single candle illuminating her face. She looked older than her 32 years, worn down by hunger and fear and the daily grind of survival. "Did you eat?" I asked. "Some turnip soup. There's a bowl for you." The soup was thin, flavored with a bone I'd brought home and a wilted cabbage leaf purchased for 3 marks at the market. It tasted of nothing, but it was warm, and warmth was a gift in October 1942. After we ate, after the candle burned low, we huddled together near the hidden radio, a small device concealed inside a broken cabinet, illegal, punishable by death if discovered. Helena adjusted the dial slowly, carefully, until the static resolved into a voice. "This is London, the BBC. The Polish service, our link to the world beyond occupation, to the truth beyond propaganda, to the hope that this nightmare might someday end." We listened to reports of fighting in North Africa, of resistance in Yugoslavia, of German losses on the Eastern Front. We listened and allowed ourselves to believe that the tide might turn, that liberation might come, that we might survive to see it. In the morning, I would wake and walk to the shop again. I would receive another carcass, break it down into portions too small to satisfy, navigate the regulations and the threats and the small corruptions that defined existence under occupation. I would smile at German sergeants and hide fat for desperate mothers and make the impossible calculations of survival. This was my resistance. This was my war. I was not a soldier. I had no weapon except my cleaver, no ammunition except my knowledge of how to make scarcity last one more day. But I was essential. Not because the meat I provided kept bodies alive, though it did, but because the act of continuing, of maintaining the rituals of normal life in the face of abnormality, kept something more important alive. Hope, dignity, the stubborn belief that we were still human, still worthy, still capable of kindness in a world designed to crush it. The Germans could take our country, our freedom, our food. They could hang their propaganda on our walls and their regulations around our necks. They could occupy our streets and our shops and our lives, but they could not occupy the space inside. Us where we remained ourselves, where a butcher could still be a craftsman, where a small act of generosity could still be an act of defiance, where the simple continuation of daily life, waking, working, surviving, became the most profound form of resistance. In 1942, in occupied Warsaw, in a butcher shop that smelled of sawdust and carbolic soap, this was victory. This was how we won. One day at a time, one hidden gram of fat at a time, one small act of human kindness at a time, until liberation came or we died trying.